Hi, welcome to the revolutionary journey.
It's going to be revolutionary.
It's gonna be revolutionary.
I'm doing well. I had a nice, relaxing weekend. I was with my Finnish family celebrating the matriarch and patriarch's 50th wedding anniversary.
Imagine 50 years together,
And
right?
I know.
That's quite a journey.
I even have friends. I can't imagine having 50-year-old friendships.
Yeah, I'm not that gifted in years either, and not even not also in relationships. I
Yeah, exactly.
think the longest relationship you always have is with yourself.
Exactly, tie-in.
Yes. What is the revolutionary journey and why are we here?
This is the brainchild of both of us. I think we were talking about this about a month ago. And prior to that, we meet weekly. So really, this revolutionary journey is byproduct of two friends and leadership practitioners who meet weekly and discuss topics on life, leadership, work, and I think in that order, and more importantly in life, right? And like draws the parallels from life to leadership, life to work, and not the other way around, right? And it's been quite cool to learn the similarities, but also to get to know you as a friend and as a human being. That's been quite cool.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think that our weekly meetings were something that helped me a lot. And just sometimes you are in your head and you're thinking like, oh, is it just me? And having someone to share the ideas about what I believe life is about, how I want to live my life, and have someone have those conversations really helped me. And then when we started thinking about, okay, how do we keep this going? And one of the things that we discussed is that not many people have these conversations. And the reasons we are here is trying to bring this conversation to more people and hopefully help people who are struggling in the way they live, they lead, and somehow things don't add. And I like to say it's you're running in this circle of expectations from someone somewhere that the way that you're supposed to be. You don't even know if they're true, by the way, because most of those nobody ever told you. It's just somehow they're ingrained in our head because of the culture, because of where we are and what we observe and how we interpret what we observe, right? So that's how we got here. And we wanted to share this and figure out, is this something that can help people? Let's see what it is going to be. But we want to kick in with an important topic of figuring out who you are and what works for you and what doesn't. But before we get there, I wanted to get maybe a short intro to who you are.
Who I am, and more importantly, how we know each other. So we used to work together in a previous company. So if I had to synthesize in like a minute, I have roughly 15 years of experience in people functions, so recruiting, learning and development, also employee relations. And I've been a leader for roughly 10 of those 15 years, leading teams as large as 25 and as small as myself. But more importantly, like who I am outside of my profession, I'm a citizen of the world. I really love living and learning in other countries. Finland, I moved here roughly about 5 years ago. Also lived in Norway, Malaysia, Vietnam for a little bit. So I feel like my leadership journey has also been a travel backpacking journey as well. And there's a lot of overlap and lessons and all of that stuff that we will share as we continue these conversations.
Thank you. And myself, who I am is, and I like to say I'm an observer and a participant in life. I have this strong belief that there are two types of people. There are two types of people. You either live your life
Yeah.
or you let life happen to you. I like to live my life. And that's what I'm all about in the recent years. And in professional life, I have been working in many different types of organization. I have a background in physics, and I have been working anywhere from NGOs to a big governmental organization like the European Space Agency, through startups, scale-ups. And as you mentioned, we met in a company where we worked before, and we really enjoyed having conversations. Even though maybe we didn't have so many of them while we were working together, because I was leading engineering and product teams while you were in the people function. But I think there is something that we always agreed on, and that's just about how do you make people that you work with really, like, how do you help them grow? How do you enable them? And how do you build a great, diverse team that can take way more than they think they are capable of and enjoy it in the process? Because that's the part that is really important. Sometimes we forget. We can achieve a lot, but do you enjoy it? So I've been in these different roles, tech companies where quite often, and to be honest, I'm the only woman in the room. That has been a big impact on my life also, about like how I show up and how I think I want to show up, and not necessarily conforming to what is expected, but how I want to be. I've seen a lot of good stuff. I've seen a lot of bad stuff. A lot of the things that I learned about leadership is by observing and saying, okay, if I'm ever in that position, I'm never going to do that. And I think that's one of the very interesting things, that, of course, it's easy to think what works, but then when you are in the moment, it's really hard to show up as you want. And that's what we wanted to talk about today.
Exactly. How do I want to show up? Which is a great segue into our topic today around self-awareness, or figuring out the mistakes that we made.
Exactly. All right. So we wanted to talk about self-awareness today. Self-awareness is something that my personal belief is that self-awareness is a backbone being able to lead. That's a really strong statement. But your task as a leader, as I see it, is again to enable your team, enable them to do what they're good at, grow when they're not good at, and just find a way of working within the system where they are and figuring out how to take this challenge that you have as a company to the next level. In order to do that, you need to be really in tune with who they are, how they are, like what works for them and what doesn't. And how are you going to be in tune with that if you're not in tune with yourself?
Exactly. And I think also one thing that's important to understand is that you're self-aware, or yourself, it is quite dynamic, right? So knowing who they are in the moment, in the season, and then knowing that could change any moment, right? So it's figuring out how can I constantly stop, reflect, and calibrate, and then move forward.
I love what you're saying, because it's also about the seasons, right?
Yep.
It's one of these things that is, okay, now I'm self-aware. No,
Exactly.
it's like
it's like an experiment. You're self-aware with these variables, but then new variables come and go. And so, okay, how are you self-aware in that experiment?
So when you think about it, how would you define self-awareness?
Yeah, so self-awareness, if I think about the cut and dry version, it's understanding your strengths and areas of improvements, or your current restrictions, and how they may affect others in the room. So let's say, for example, I know I am quite bullish, especially if it's something that's seated in my ethics, right? So I'm like, hey, no, this is a non-negotiable, right? And so I know that to others that might come off as bullish, unforgiving, stubborn, etc. So it's just understanding that my strengths and then my weaknesses may be interpreted differently in a different room or with a different person. And so just understanding how those interact with others.
Yeah, I like this. I like this idea. And I recently heard this in a podcast, that everyone is an acquired taste, right?
Yep.
And I love that, because it's like this idea that, look, you are a certain way. You might be aware of that, but that still not might be the way that someone needs to interact with, right? So like the way, if you're saying like, I'm a little bit bullish, and there are certain things that I believe are important because of what I believe in and because of my value system. And I'm just not gonna, I don't want to go against that. That might not work for some people. And that's okay. Well, it's like, it's not your job to make everyone like you and so on, right? So that's fine. But I think what you're getting at is like understanding that this is the way you are. And it doesn't mean that, okay, that's the way I am, and like, take it or leave it. No. That's not self-awareness. That's not self-awareness. That's part of it. This is the way you are. And that might work in some situations and in others not. And you might need to work with people and figure out, okay, is this working? Is this not working? Going back to those tiny experiments that you were referring.
Exactly. Now, as far as like definition, anything that you want to add or you want to counter in my definition of self-awareness?
I think for me, self-awareness is also about really understanding what you believe. What are the things that make you, and what are the things that are absolutely non-negotiable for you? Like, when are you kind of like, when is the box of your values, and where do they come from? Because quite often we have this very strong beliefs that are very deeply ingrained. And then when you go there and examine them, you're like, actually, I don't know if this is true anymore for me, because they can come from anything. So for me, it's like understanding what you believe and what is that is truly your belief against the belief of a society, the way you were raised, the way like the companies where you are, like what is it that makes you, what do you value? And then from there, understanding what works for you, what gives you energy, why it gives you energy, and when it gives you energy. because the circumstances change. So that's what I would say is self-awareness. And that's why I also think it's not, okay, you reached it. Yeah, that's not true. It's a daily practice. That's how I like to think about it.
Exactly. I like that you added the why and the when to the
Mm.
what, because that's often missed. Say, okay, this gives you energy. You know that. Okay, you've identified this, but why? And then maybe there's a deeper psychological reason why it gives you energy. And then also the when. So that's also like the situation. You're looking at the situation as a whole and really identifying that. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's why is self-awareness so important for people who are in these positions that are starting to lead or have been already leading teams for years, but somehow just something doesn't feel right. I think there is also this part where very often, if you don't have this understanding of who you are, what makes you, what are your values, what gives you energy, and so on, you start identifying yourself with your work.
Yes. Yep. Your profession becomes your person.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And I think that's right. So the why it's important, it's to really understand your limitations. And I know that sounds a bit awful to somebody who is like high achieving and all that stuff, but limitations are great because it recognizes that, hey, that's my limit. Now I know when I'm looking for somebody to join my team or project or what have you, I know what skills to look for. I know what the deficits are, right? So it actually makes you a better leader and overall thinker, systems thinker, because you know where your deficits are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you also mentioned that because this goes a little bit maybe off topic into the build, how do we build the teams, right? And like actually building complementary skill sets rather than copies of ourselves, which happens as well, right? But that's a tangent. Let's pause it for now and think of, okay, so now I am a person that is trying to think of, okay, cool. So how do I work on this? How do I get this self-awareness thing? What do I need to do? Meditate 5 hours every day?
Yeah. You and I have had a lot of conversations on this, and the answer is great big. It just depends. So it depends on, number one, your season in life. So where are you? So for example, if I look at both our journeys, I am single. I have next to no responsibilities outside of feeding myself. So for me to find 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day is quite easy. But if you have somebody that has family obligations, it might be a bit more complex. So it's just really understanding the season. So that's why we say it's a great big, it depends. But the thing that makes me realize why it's important is because I recognize its priority. In order for me to navigate life with intention, in order for me to navigate my profession with intention, I need to be aware of what's going on with me so I can respond appropriately. I'll give you an example. If I'm sick, right? If you're sick, especially if you have a cold running 102 degrees, you don't necessarily go into work because why? You will affect other people, right? Or maybe there's no bed for you to go sleep on, or you can't really take any sleeping medications because you're not performing well. So it's just really big. It depends. And we'll give you some advice on how we practice self-awareness. But we really want to drive home the point that it really depends.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it depends on where you are in life and so on. I think it's also the different things of like, what can you do in where you are? And don't think about it in a way that, okay, I need to have a full day. I'll do it, because that never happens. And that's the same with anything. Anything you want to do in life is just think of what is the smallest thing that you can do, but you can do every day. And if that is 1 minute, then that's 1 minute, and that's fine. That's a perfect place to start. And I say it over and over again: consistency is the most important thing, and it just, no way it will always beat the investment in time. It will always beat like the intensity and so on. Like consistency compounds, and that like over time gives you like so much more. But before we go into those little things that can make you self-aware and so on, I wanted to get into some specific examples. Can you tell me about when you discovered that something is a problem in the setting where you were, how you got there, and what helped you to get out of there?
Yeah. So I think the companies that I work for, I'm used to a certain level of understanding concepts at a very high and granular level. And so when I moved from that company into a different company, That was my baseline. My baseline was like,
Mm.
okay, these are systems thinkers. These are folks that kind of zoom in and out. And I didn't really have to worry about bringing them along. So I ran my workshops that way. I ran my workshops with the understanding that, oh, they know this vernacular.
Yeah.
Oh, they know these concepts and these frameworks. I don't really have to stop. And it wasn't until my second workshop with this company that I was like, like I felt really bad because if my mouth doesn't say it, my face definitely will. So I'm also very self-aware. So that's why I smile a lot. And so it took me a moment that I needed to take my content and scale it back and start with the definitions, start with like the primary colors before we got
Yeah.
into complex blendings, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I learned early on when I joined the new company. Was that, hey, let's calibrate understanding first, and let's calibrate people's ability to scale in and out or zoom in and out before we build the content. And the reason why I bring that example to the front is because it actually made me a better researcher. It made me a better communicator because I was
Mm.
reminded of the basics of communication, which is to aim your message, right? Know your audience. So it's
Yeah.
okay, now I know this. And so that really like tangibly helped me. And how I know it helped me is I give a survey after every workshop around understanding, and it went from roughly about 60% to close to 95% over the course of 6 months. So that was really good.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
great. It's great to catch yourself in those moments when you're like looking into the room and there's like, by the way, nobody has any idea what am I talking about. So it's quite refreshing. And when you can read the room and that you're like, okay, I'm in
Yeah.
trouble. Yeah, I have actually like for me, I was thinking about it, and like quite a similar situation in a way. I tend to be a very decisive person, especially in a work setting. But probably if you ask my husband also at home, and I just I hate indecisions. Let's just go this way, and maybe it's a wrong way, but at least we're going right. So maybe sometimes that's might seem to people that hey, it's just like random stuff. But the thing is that because I'm very much a system thinker, and I just have this, it's very hard to explain what's happening in my brain. By the way, it's true to ever talk about language and understanding what's happening in your brain, and actually just putting this to the words, and then making sure that people understand those words in a way that you meant them, and don't get hurt or anything. It's like super complex stuff, and we do it all the time. So somehow there, but at work situations, I can think of, okay, those are like all the possible things that can happen. This is run the scenarios in my head and think, okay, the best way, like the way forward is this, right? And I would just go discuss it with have a meeting with teams and okay, I think we need to go there. Let's go. And then at some point I started getting thinking about like we never have a say. We don't get to decide what's being done, and we don't understand why. As actually, I thank you for the feedback. It's not true. I actually listen to everything that you say, and I take that into my scenario building machine and figure out what needs to happen, how it needs to happen, and then go forward. But I don't bring up this story.
Yeah.
So people get lost. They're like, okay, that's just decision based on like whenever was felt, right? I have a problem with actually creating that great storyline of, okay, this is the problem, this is what we can tackle, this is how we're going to do it, and this is the consistent way to like it, that we can make this very cohesive action plan to tackle this problem, and that's why we are taking this way. Because I feel like this is like obvious to everyone.
Yeah. No,
but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, so it's the same feeling that you had, right?
I know we talked about this earlier. It's like this assumed notion that everybody knows how to scenario build to
Yeah.
why you got there, right? I can completely understand this person saying, hey, you're not bringing us along the journey. And you're like, actually, no, you are on the journey because you're in the room with me right now.
Yeah.
I'm sharing with you my thoughts. And they're like, you weren't in the room when I was thinking at midnight about this because that's inappropriate. So it's,
Yeah.
how do you tug a war this thing, right? Because okay, I don't want you to be burdened with my complete and stupid thoughts sometimes when I'm scenario building, but I also want to make sure make you feel empowered. So I guess my question for both of us is like, how do we balance that? Because there's a appropriate point of time where we bring people into our crazy brains, and then there's appropriate moment where we don't do it. And I guess this is where we're trying to calibrate this, right? We're trying to calibrate when this most appropriate to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that people in general want to, like my experience is that people want to feel that they are listened. That's the most important one because we all want to be heard and understood what we need. And I think that what I learned from a lot of this experience is that it doesn't even matter if someone tells you something that they are concerned about and so on. And you say, okay, like we're still not going to go that way. But what matters is that you make sure that they feel listened, that they
Yeah.
are heard, and that you, when you take that decision, that is maybe against what they advise, you say, I understand where you're coming from. I heard what you're saying. We're going to go this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And that is like this part where we will never agree on whatever. Right? There's always
Exactly.
going to be, we will always
Yeah.
disagree. But I want to make sure that people understand that it's not that I'm not listening to what you're saying. I hear your concern and I understand it. But based on everything else,
Yeah.
we're still going to go that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. It's like the feeling, right? So it's
Mm.
and also helping them understand that sometimes like the decisions we make are not our decisions as well as leaders. It's like a lot, like in order to get here,
Yeah.
we actually got input from people above and beside us as well.
Yeah.
And I think we know each, like I at least know that you're not a dictatorial leader, and I hope people don't feel that way about me. But you're right, it's about making sure that people feel heard, but also recognizing that if there's been times where it's actually I'm going to take a component of your feedback and put it in, right?
Yeah.
And then also,
Absolutely.
yeah. And for me, I learned this phrase in a previous role where pilot programs are the best. So it's actually pilot it for a month. If it doesn't work, I reserve the right to pull it
Yeah.
without including you in this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That works well. And my experience as well, just like trying things, and sometimes you learn way more by, well, most of the time you learn more by just doing it. But I guess that's one of the things that I like in this specific experience that I had that helped me was actually really inviting the feedback, right? My experience is that at some point in your career, you will not be getting much feedback. It's like people will not tell you things. They will like just
Mhm.
be avoiding confrontations. Because why? I believe it's because we take our jobs too seriously in a way that we identify with them, right? And for me,
Yes.
every feedback about my work, what I do professionally, it's look, obviously you have a certain expectations of how I need to do this role. This is how I want to do this role because of me. And those don't match. So we like, this is just a simple misalignment of expectations of what you thought and what is actually happening. It has nothing to do with me as a person. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I'm like unworthy or whatever. No, it's just like a simple misalignment of expectations. That's it. That's why I love feedback, because it's okay, if this is what you expect and this is what you're getting, like how can we get closer? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this specific situation, what helped me was inviting that feedback and also just finding out people who can call me out. Because when you are in the moment, it is hard. Yeah. Sometimes it's just because you're running 100 miles an hour all the time. Like especially in the high growth companies, startups, you are running all the time. And having someone who says, I don't get the story. And then you're like, okay, here we
Yeah.
go again. But fine, let me explain it to you. But it's like that is specifically for me what helped me. So invite feedback and find someone who you're comfortable with saying, who is comfortable saying that to you, and who you're know that, okay, fine, I'll take it. I understand where you're coming from.
Exactly. And you reminded me of something as well, as in order for you to be a good self-awareness practitioner as well, or even a good leader, is to build safeguards on when you're exuding behaviors that is misconstrued as not inviting, right? For example, with my team, I'll be very frank with you. I don't really, I don't really care about getting accolades from leadership. I think
Yeah.
it's very uncomfortable, and I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a deeper psychological of it, but we won't explore that now. And so I'm like, okay, we've already written the goals, authored it together, we've agreed on it. I know the goalposts and all stuff. I know when I reach that, I've succeeded. I know when I've exceeded that, I've succeeded. So that to me was like, I'm already getting accolades from the graph going to 100%, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so anytime I have a new team member or anytime I'm tasked with a new project team, I always let them know, ask their preferences, because then I make a note like, oh, this person really likes weekly end of day or end of week wrap up. I'm like, this is what you succeeded at,
Mm.
yada, because they get that feeling. Goes back to again
Mm.
feeling. And I had this one team member that really just liked the metaphorical pat on the back. So I told them
Mm.
from the beginning, I'm like, hey, if there's any moment where you feel I am not appreciating you, you need to be the one to come in and help me be honest, because especially if I'm busy, and we all get busy at work, right? I'm in the back of my brain, I'm deprioritizing that because I'm prioritizing some other strategy pieces. Just help me. I will be more than happy to do something, right? And it actually turned out to be one of the best working relationships I had, number one. And number two, it built into me this practice where I do a weekly kind of check-in with everybody.
Mm.
And I have this like color wheel of charts where it's like, hey, how do you feel about your work this week? And like
Mm.
it's like 160 different feelings. And so that's actually, I do it every Friday. And I use that for my Monday conversation to check in. Hey, I understood last week you were malcontented with your work. Talk to me more about what happened so we can set the
Yeah.
tone for this week.
Yeah.
And so it turned out to be this kind of, oh, this is actually this is a game now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's great. And also sometimes I feel like in this specific example, maybe what you are doing unconsciously is we're actually giving people the language, right?
Yeah.
Giving people the language to say like, how do I actually feel about this? Because that's it's part of the work you actually on self-awareness is
Yeah.
acquiring the language and understanding is what is it that I'm feeling. And for me, I guess one of the things that I notice in myself is very often I was like, oh, I get so angry. I was like, no, it's actually not anger. It's actually exasperation.
Yeah.
Because there's things that I cannot change.
Yeah.
And sometimes I could get very frustrated by that. So yeah, but getting that language is also part of this process, right? Like
Yeah.
figuring out what is it that is it really happening in your head.
Exactly. Yeah, because like,
Yeah.
for example, if you do like just the normal check-ins, which is like historically once or twice a year, right? You're doing good, you're doing great.
Right.
And so that lacks meaning, especially if you're doing
Okay.
it with a company, let's say 45,000, 30,000,
Mhm.
or even
Yeah.
a team of 25, right? So it loses its luster when you say, oh, you're doing a great job, right? And so to give that folks more complex feelings, more complex language, you
Yeah.
really help them like, okay, how are you feeling? There's a difference between, oh, it was a bad week or it was an exhausting week. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. What was exhausting about it? And especially for if we look inside, was it exhausting because it was too much work? Was it exhausting because the work was too complex? Where you missed the line? So you start off having more meaningful conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think that having those like conversations that really understand what happened and understand like the energy that it brought, right? So this goes like into one of the things that I love to do for actually building up your self-awareness, which is tracking your energy and figuring out of the things that are happening in your life or work and whatever, what are the things that are giving you energy and what are the things that are draining it. It's a simple. Sometimes it can be weekly, sometimes it can be daily. And look at your calendar and think of, okay, this was fun. Oh no,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, what was that? That was terrible. I think so. It's especially when you are at some point in my career, I was constantly running from one meeting to another, just like hindsight, a total waste of time.
Yeah.
And then you go into those meetings and you realize that, by the way, 80% of those meetings are just such energy drainers, and I
Yeah.
don't get anything out of that. Yeah. And then you can start changing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but that also reminds me because it starts also with you, right? So if you
Yes.
think that 80% of those is worthless, right? I've started making note of, okay, when I'm putting a meeting on a calendar, especially if I'm looping a big meeting with a lot of actors in there, okay, what exactly am I trying to convey here?
Yes.
And is it more receivable in a Slack, in an
Yes.
email,
Yes.
in a meme? Like, I think make it fun, right? I remember, and I think you were part of some of these meetings. I
Yeah.
remember being part of these weekly meetings. I'm like, guys, I've updated everything in the documents. You're just asking me to speak it out loud for 2 minutes, and we have an hour-long meeting. And I was like, guys, come on. Is there a way we can let's consider 30 minutes, right? Come on.
Yeah.
And so I think if I be a self-awareness practitioner, I was self-aware that I like this is how I learn information, and I don't like I'm looking for efficiencies versus the project manager was like, I'm trying to get everybody to socialize and appreciate everybody's work. And I was like, fair point, but can you still do it in 30 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, are we really socializing and appreciating
Yeah,
each other's work when we're like giving a status update about
yeah,
where we are, and everyone is speaking for 1 minute, and for the other 59 minutes of that hour is just zooming out.
exactly.
Because let's be honest, that's what happens, right?
Yeah,
When you open your Slack and, oh yeah, I can answer my email or my Slack and while we are
exactly.
here. Yeah, okay, but yeah, that's absolutely true. And so this thing about understanding really what during the day energizes you and what drains you helps you make better choices about the work you do and how you divide it, and also gives you a little bit of this feeling that, hey, maybe I can change that, right? So if there's certain meetings during your day when you say, okay, this I strongly believe is a waste of time, but it is part of the culture in our company and this is just what we do. So then you have to start thinking of like, okay, how do I make the most out of this meeting, and how do I like slowly change it so that it actually starts working for me? Because let's be realistic, it's like you will not always be in a position where you can say that the monthly business review is a total waste of time for everyone and we shouldn't do this. But you might like try and put there grains of things that you actually believe are going to help people and are going to give you energy when you present them.
Yeah. For that, I think this might be a different topic, but
Yes.
for that's that situational awareness for me and
Yes,
understanding
absolutely.
how
Yeah.
different companies govern themselves. For me, my north is always looking for efficiency in the way we
Mm,
communicate, in the way we share information, things like that.
mm,
And usually for these monthly business reviews, it's I've learned at two different previous companies that it's just a way for that leader to communicate that, hey, I'm there with you, I'm invested with you, this is really important. And I'm like,
mm,
it's maybe not how I do things, but then also recognizing that, okay, this is the situation, this is what they
yeah.
need, and then make exactly when you're that aware of others around you, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
fine, we'll reluctantly buy into this.
Yeah, no, I get you, but it is part of part of the situational awareness as well, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
Maybe that's something that we want to tackle separately. But it is also like this, like what you just mentioned. Like when you understand how you feel about this
yeah,
certain situation, you can start tuning into how why other people are there, and that
yeah,
goes back to what we discussed earlier. That being self-aware helps you to be aware of people around you,
yeah,
what they need, what is their energy. And when you have that, you can then understand that in this context, that person needs this because of that, right? And then when you understand that context and their motivation for that, now that is the moment when you can start making changes, because now you know what they need. Now
yeah,
you understand their motivation. And then you can start thinking, okay, but what if I give this to you in a different format that works for me, gives you
yeah,
the same information, keeps the motivation the same, and we get to the same point. So that is very important part about building self-awareness, so that you understand better yourself, where you are, and then you can start understanding people in the room, where they are, what they need, and that takes you a long way in your work life and personal
yeah.
life as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's definitely benefits to the intrapersonal relationship that you built, but also the word that keeps coming to mind is you get to practice your curiosity, right? So you get
Yeah.
to practice like,
Yeah.
okay, now you're curious about this person and how you can present information in different ways. But then for me, in my experience, you also take that curiosity into other facets of your work, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's you brainstorming content or you brainstorming a new approach, right? So then you have your curiosity muscles already been exercised.
Yeah.
So it's very like planned and ready for new information. So it's like there's other
Mm,
benefits on top of that.
absolutely. And I think that's a great thing to think about. It's like tuning into yourself. It's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
That's perfect. You understand where you are. You're curious about yourself. And then this part about what we discovered, like when and why, it's
Yeah.
okay, now go into that curiosity and try and understand why is this, and like when is this showing up for you? Because like we both live in Finland. Life is different in summer and in winter. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like no, come visit Finland
But
in the winter. It's
yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was this part of just foster that curiosity about like why things are a certain way for you.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to get into also is like we were discussing about how to be a self-awareness practitioner, and how to like what are the small little things that you can start doing, even if no matter where you are, you always want to start small.
Sure.
And when we discussed this before, you told me that for you there's a part about your mornings and your sleep that is very important. Can you tell me more about
Right.
that?
Yeah. So for me, the main factor and it's is sleep, right? I try to get at least 7 hours of sleep, if not eight. Because for me, and studies have shown, sleep is a good precursor to creativity, precursor to health, precursor to attitude, right? And when I think back on the last year, usually when I start my mornings off with in a bad mood, it's because I didn't get the sleep that I wanted, right? So
Yeah.
I've already predetermined that, oh my gosh, these 4 hours, it's not going to work, right? So it's like, what can I do to navigate my way through this day, right? And let this, to use your phrasing, let this day happen to me versus let me experience the day or
Yeah.
let me make my own experience in the day. So sleep is the main thing that I look at, whether I got the right amount of sleep, whether I slept in the right bed. Sometimes
Yeah.
you can veg out and sleep on the couch. And
Yes.
I'm an older millennial, so like my back and my neck is not as young as it used to be. Age is creeping up right there. So
Oh,
that's my main
yeah.
thing at least.
Yeah. 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 No, I hear it. I think sleep is very important. And for me, it's also about figuring out, can I, there's this part where I have been in my career when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like all in your head, thinking about all the things that had happened or need to
Mhm,
happen, and you just go into the spinning circles. And that is not a healthy place, not a healthy
mhm.
place to be at all, right? So we tend to forget about sleep, and it's just so simple.
Yeah.
And so crucial for us, for our well-being, and being able to understand that, can I sleep well? Is this whatever it is that is happening during the day, is it going to affect how I
Yeah.
sleep? That's very important.
And one other thing too, like that you mentioned, I haven't done it in a while because I haven't needed
Yeah.
to, but usually when I'm up and my thoughts are racing, I practiced it. I did this like 20 years ago. I just wrote down everything that was
Yeah.
happening, that was in my brain. The
Mhm.
act for me of getting it from my brain through my hand, through my writing utensil on paper was like transferring the energy on there. And that way I could ease my mind and say, hey, now you put it on paper, we can think about it when our brain is a lot more functioning right now. So it's,
Lovely. Yeah.
that also is a good, very tangible step for you to recognize, hey, I'm spinning. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I know my norm is not to be up this late.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put it down on paper and then spend the next 30 minutes writing it and then head to bed because I know that piece of paper is waiting for me in the morning or in the afternoon to look at and dress.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And the exact same thing actually what I think works for me, right? Having your notebook like sometimes literally next to your bed.
Yes.
Or the one thing is, just if you're in that situation, just get out of bed. Like literally, don't lay down there. Get out of bed. Write it down.
Right.
Walk around the house, whatever. Just because laying there and like doing this is not really helping you, and you will not get out of that
Yeah.
wheel that you're running there
Yeah.
very easily.
And I
Yeah.
think it's also a good lesson for life, right? It's hey, if what you're doing isn't working, lying in bed, spinning and all
Yeah.
stuff, change it, right? So
Yes,
you have two
absolutely. Get
decisions.
out of
You
this.
can,
Yeah.
yeah. So go back to
Yeah.
your lesson. You have two decisions. You can either let this happen to you or you can make your own experience. So it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah, yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's same for everything. It's your sleep, but it's also like where you are. It's just, and it doesn't mean that you need to like make drastic changes. Sometimes like just getting out and saying, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go outside for 5 minutes
yeah,
and look at the tree.
yeah,
I love trees. Yeah.
exactly.
So it's like I'm just gonna sit there here and look at the tree, and people are gonna think I'm an idiot, but who cares? I don't care.
Yeah,
You know, I just need that because I need that moment to you
yeah.
know,
But then
ground
that
myself.
you said
Yeah.
something that's also interesting. It's the perceptions of others' perception on you. Others are going to think I'm an idiot. That shouldn't be important for you now. The important thing is, hey,
Yeah.
you're not in bed sleeping. How
Yeah.
can I address this? So, and we'll cover that in probably a different podcast episode. But it's like your sleep at least should be your baseline. You know,
Yes,
great.
absolutely. Yeah. So what we're saying is, if you want to start this journey of figuring out what works for you, what doesn't, and like figuring out what your values are and so on, it's as simple as starting with your sleep. Are you
Yeah,
sleeping well? What
exactly.
is keeping you up at night? And I think for me, the other part that I like to add to it is really tuning into your morning,
Yeah.
figuring out, okay, what am I looking forward to this today? You know, I love this quote of this is something that I learned years ago, that it is an anecdote. I'm not sure if it's true, but apparently Salvador Dali would wake up every morning thinking, what wonderful things Salvador Dali is going to do today. And he was quite an extraordinary person. So I believe it could be true that he would tell that to himself, ask himself that question. And I think it's a beautiful question to ask yourself. What amazing things are you going to do today?
Yeah.
And this is the question. If the answer is like, nothing, I have a couple of dreadful meetings. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But what am I going to do after work? What am I going to do before work? Where is the energy going to come from today?
Exactly. And I like it because you start your day with ownership. You start
Yes.
your day saying, what amazing things am I going to do today? Or
Yes.
what am I going to accomplish? So it's okay, cool. Like you're really, in my opinion, started off on within the right mood, mindset. Hey, today's my day. I get to do it.
And sometimes, and on that note, is like I'm not like I'm generally optimistic, but I love this idea of maybe I'm a failed pessimist because there's this part of me where it's always you gotta be tone it down a little bit. The optimism, life is not always beautiful, although it is.
Yep.
But some days it's not gonna be your day, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And it's like it's fine. And then sometimes you wake up in the middle of March, and it's still snowing outside.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, you know what? This is the day that's going to happen to me. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. But for me, that reminds me, weekend before last, I went with a friend to one of the public saunas here, and she had a flight that evening. And so we wanted to go to sauna and swimming and then to eat before her flight, right? And so I was like, okay, cool. We set some time on when we needed to get to the airport or the train station and all stuff. And we found that when we're doing let me take a breath. In Finland, typically you do sauna, swimming, and you do that for roughly about a few cycles, right? We're really enjoying yourself. And like the water was 19 degrees the minute we got acclimated.
Which is really warm for Finland, by the way.
It's really warm, yeah. And so we're really enjoying it, and we're enjoying each other's company. Yeah. And so we're looking at the clock. We're like, oh, okay, what do we want to do? And she's just like, I want to go another cycle. I was like, let's go another cycle. So we went another cycle. And then at the end of the cycle, I was like, actually, let's go another cycle. Yeah. And so we knew in our minds that we were mortgaging our time eating together. Yeah. And so that's all she could focus on. She's like, oh man, I would really love to sit down and eat and all stuff. And I was like, yeah, but think about it. We did something better for our body and our mind. We got 2 extra cycles of sauna and swim. Yeah. And so she's just like, I like that you look on the positive side. I was like, it's not necessarily looking at the positive side. It's like looking at what you got versus what you gave up. So it's, hey, we got this. That's cool. That's awesome. So like it relates to a bit more, hey, not every day is going to be good, and that's okay, but there is good in the day. Yeah, exactly. And there's part of what you just mentioned that is very important, that you're always going to give up something to do something else. Yeah, exactly. And that's just how it is. You're always going to make those decisions. Accepting that and figuring out what am I optimizing for today is an important part of it. Exactly. All right. Anything else on this conversation that you think is that we missed? No, I think this is a good start. And if I only had one other thing to mention is, I'm going to reiterate what I said. Being a self-awareness practitioner is a very ever-changing journey, right? So you can be very self-aware in June of 2025, but then by July of 2025, it's not working anymore. And it's not something that's internal. It's something that is likely external. I would say 95% external. So just really recognizing your current self in your current environment. No, exactly. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that the key to it is always just start with small things that you can do consistently. And sometimes you get there and you have this 1 minute to, I don't know, maybe this write in your journal, whatever it is that it works for you. And you say like, hey, I want to write something important, and just write that. I want to write something important. Something important. Yeah, that's the thing. Because that's the thing. That's just consistently showing up for yourself. That's what self-awareness is. Exactly. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, PJ, for this conversation. As always, it was great. But hey, before we go, let's celebrate. This is our inaugural journey, our revolutionary journey. This is awesome. Thank you. Thanks for putting the idea in my head, and I think this is going to be great. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone.